Today I'm going to explain to you what made Thomas Shelby become who he is, and what you can take from his mindset to start thinking and acting like him. Enjoy the video. Myth of Thomas Shelby. The myth of Thomas Shelby was not born in the alleys of Birmingham. It was not born in a bar or at a betting table. The myth was born in the mud, in the blood, in the silent hell of war. There, among explosions, screams, and corpses, he learned the first truth that would mark him forever. Life is not fair. The world has no mercy. And if you want to keep standing, you must become harder than death itself. When he returned, they called him a hero. They gave him medals. They shook his hand. But behind those eyes there was no innocence left. Only ruins. Nightmares, insomnia, the faces of his fallen brothers. That kind of pain destroys anyone. But Shelby did not break. Every day he rose with his body trembling from memories, and still he kept going. He walked. He planned. He built. Because he had decided that if hell could not kill him, nothing on this earth ever would. That was the beginning of the myth. A broken man but still standing. A man who understood that his pain was not a chain but a motor. The myth of Thomas Shelby is not in his suit, nor in his cap, nor in his cigarette. It is in his resilience. In the brutal capacity to turn every wound into a weapon, every tear into strength, every ghost into fuel. Many believe the myth was born from his businesses or his victories in the streets. The truth is different. The myth was born the day he chose not to surrender. Greatness never begins in a palace. It begins in the mud, in the darkness, in the place where no one else survives. That is the myth of Thomas Shelby. The man who stopped fearing death, and therefore feared nothing. The man who walked with his demons as allies, and built an empire on his scars. How Thomas Shelby thinks. The difference between an ordinary man and Thomas Shelby was not luck. It was not fortune. It was his mind. While others reacted with fear or rage, he thought coldly. While others spoke without control, he stayed silent. While others ran, he waited. That was his secret. Coldness, calculation, patience. The first rule: never act in haste. Impulse is the weapon of the weak. Desperation is the grave of men. Every move had to be measured like a chess game. The second rule: silence is power. Many cannot bear silence, they break, they show their cards. Shelby knew silence dominates more than a scream. One of his silences could bend anyone. The third rule: demons are not chains, they are fuel. The war left him full of ghosts, but he did not run. He turned them into a motor. Into the force that pushed him forward when everything inside begged him to surrender. The fourth rule: never show weakness. Inside he was broken, but outside he was steel. No one saw his cracks. That was his strategy, to look untouchable even if he burned inside. That is how Thomas Shelby thought. Cold, calculating, impenetrable. And that mentality made him indestructible. How Thomas Shelby acts. Thinking was half the path. What made him unstoppable was how he acted. The first rule: he never doubted. He could be surrounded by enemies with everything against him. But once he made a decision, he moved without looking back. Because doubt kills more dreams than any enemy. The second rule: absolute control of his emotions. Rage, fear, pain, nothing escaped him. He acted like a soldier. Cold, precise, calculating. The storm was inside, but no one saw it. The third rule: constant action. Shelby never settled. He never accepted the crumbs life tried to give him. He always advanced, always reached for more. It was not greed. It was survival. Because he knew that in this world, if you stand still, you are already dead. The fourth rule: his motor was not ego, it was family. Every strike, every risk, every decision, he made it for the Shelbys. When a man fights only for himself, he can get tired. But when he fights for his blood, he never surrenders. That is how Shelby acted. Without doubt, without pause, without fear. With cold determination and fierce ambition. And with the certainty that he could not fail. Because others depended on him. The strategy of power. Shelby understood something few accept. Clean power does not exist. Everything is war. The streets, politics, business. The difference is the weapons. First rule: make them underestimate you. He never showed all his cards. While they looked at him as just a gangster, he was planning the final strike. Second rule, silence as a trap. Where others shouted, he stayed quiet. And in that silence, his rivals exposed themselves. Third rule, from fear to respect. Fear opens doors, but respect keeps them open. That is why every fallen enemy was part of a bigger plan, to build a name impossible to ignore. Fourth rule, think 3 steps ahead. While others were surviving the day, Shelby was already shaping tomorrow. That was his true power. He was always ahead. That is how he built his empire. Not with brute force, not with luck, but with strategy. With the cold mind of a soldier who knows every move counts. The final lesson. After all the pain, after the war, after the enemies and the battles, what does Thomas Shelby leave us? The lesson is simple. Life is not about being perfect. Life is about being unbreakable. Shelby was not immortal. He was not a man without fear. He was a man who learned to walk with fear, who moved forward with emptiness in his chest, who chose to rise when everything inside begged him to surrender. Your scars are your armor. Your demons can be your soldiers. Never fight only for yourself, fight for something greater. And never forget, the world does not respect the weak. The world only kneels before those who think colder, act faster, and refuse to break. That is the Shelby Code. The code that turned a broken man into a myth. The same code that can turn your darkness into your greatest strength.